Welcome in, welcome back, welcome to Stream of Unconsciousness, where the subject's made up and the words don't matter. It seems like today we would be doing one of my recent toy reviews again, but that's not actually exactly what this is. I have had a fascination for Star Trek for a lot of my life. I caught the reruns when I was a kid. I wasn't quite old enough to catch it in the first run, but I did catch a lot of the reruns. It was one of my favorite TV shows ever. Still remains one of my favorite TV shows ever. It's got a lot of various incarnations now that I don't have the... I enjoy it. I know there are various and sundry segments of it that people have problems with, or at least pretend they have problems with, so they can try and pretend to be cool or whatever the modern thing going on is. But I enjoy Star Trek. As a kid, I had a lot of the 8-inch Mego figures. I think I had all of them, honestly, plus like the bridge set, which, you know, all is gone by the wayside. I've added a couple to my collection as an adult, that re-added to my collection, I guess I should say. But yeah, all the old Mego stuff that I had as a kid is long gone, unfortunately. But yeah, it was a fascination with the show and with the toys. We've had over the years a number of releases of Star Trek action figure type things. We had these from Mego again from the motion picture in '79. Again, this is not my original. I had to re-add this to my collection later. One of the things that, as a collector and as someone who enjoys action figures, I got into the Playmates line in the '90s. Which I appreciate the fact that they did, but one of the things that's bothered me a little bit about Star Trek collectibles is that for a lot of times there doesn't seem to be... It seems to be a lot of, depending on the line, and Playmates did a lot of stuff, they really did, but a lot of especially as we get into more modern times, a lot of it basically is like a reissue of, you know, here's 2 characters, or here's 5 characters that you've seen before, but you know, this is a new release of those. I don't really get a lot into the broader Star Trek universe. And coupled with that is that, especially when you look at like Playmates, they're very toyetic, and by that I mean, you know, it's very clearly, this is not designed or sculpted to look like, to be an actual representation of an actual human being. Like it's a good... I'm not saying it's not... It's a very good sculpt. I'm not saying it's a bad sculpt. It's a very good sculpt, but it's very clearly designed to be a toy, right? And even as they got a little bit more into knocking shit over, as I always do, even as they get into a little bit more of the later lines with the Deep Space Nine figures and some of those other ones, they always stayed very toyetic. That's one of the reasons why I appreciate the Hiya Toys releases, even though they've only so far really released the Kelvin figures and a couple from Strange New Worlds. I do appreciate the realism, and even Playmates has gotten a little bit more into the realism with some of their current releases. But like even this, I'm just going to drop everything tonight, aren't I? Even this figure, as nice as it is, and the detail's a little bit soft, the sculpting is a little bit soft, it's still pretty nice and has some decent articulation. But they only ever released, as far as I'm aware, thinking back, I think they released Kirk, Spock, and Khan with this particular release of figures. So again, it's a limited release. And he's going to fall over, isn't he? He's going to fall right on his face. So we're going to fix his feet real quick. Okay. So I'd like to... I have plans. I have nefarious plans. So, again, not having a lot of, other than the Playmates ones to choose from, there were the Ertl, of which I only had the Scotty, the Ertl Star Trek, I think these were Star Trek 3 releases, which were O-Ring. And, kudos to Ertl for even bothering to try for a company that was not known for action figures. Still, it's interesting, and I'm glad I have it in my collection. It's not the greatest attempt ever, and the accessories they came were bizarrely over large. But kudos to Ertl for trying. But I've always wanted to have better representations, and one of the things that I had originally thought, and I don't know that it makes it a better representation, but it made something that satisfied something within me. As a kid, I had so many Fisher-Price adventure people. Like, they were for action figures that were not based on a name brand property and did not have sort of individual hero type characters, I guess is the best way to say that. They weren't like name actors or anything like that. Just the basic generic people with all kinds of various play sets and vehicles and things. Those were fantastic when I was a kid, and I had I had tons of those things. Again, all gone by the wayside now. But just great stuff, and I played with them for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. So when I first started looking into possibly crafting something myself as an action figure, because of the simplicity of the design, we'll get into that a little bit more in a minute. I actually decided to sort of base my initial attempts at creating an action figure on the old Fisher-Price design. So this is actually, I had taken an actual Fisher-Price action figure, and I had unfortunately sort of destroyed it, moved it into, broke it into its constituent parts, and then made molds, which I then sculpted over. And this is a test shot that I did when I learned so much doing this, and probably not nearly enough, but a test shot of one of the first pulls of the molds. I learned a lot. There's a couple of different versions of this. This is the phase 3 version, where the hips and legs are separate rather than the body being all one piece and just having the arms and legs separate. And then again, I sculpted all my own heads and faces because that's what I wanted to do, rather than having the generic Fisher-Price face, which these did not. Again, it was all for me anyway, but these did not garnish as much attention as I thought they deserved, based on. This one was actually based on a friend of mine, which I gave him. I made him a copy as a present. The beard is, again, an attempt to sort of do the 3-day beard shadow that they basically just did with gray for the Fisher-Price Adventure people. But yeah, I did a few of those. Again, they're mostly just for me, and didn't really seem to garner a lot of interest. I do see a lot of, coming back and looking at it now, there are issues. The bodies are not as smooth as maybe they could or should be. There's not enough. There's an interesting thing with Fisher-Price Adventure people in that they're not extremely detailed, but what is there is enough to suggest certain things. So, like there are things with this particular design that I would go back and redo. I would fix the shoulders because I ended up resculpting those a few times, so they ended up not matching as correctly as they should. Because of the way I did this, there are clear places where you can see that I had basically I'd sculpted it and then made a mold, and then that mold was used for the final mold. So and anywhere that there was something that wasn't as smooth as it could be has come through in the mold. I should have done an interim mold, or done the molds in phases. The boots are not quite as detailed as I would do now, and the leg cuffs are not as detailed as I would do now. Now, I did try one other time, and this is based on the Super 7 figures. Basically, ripped one of those apart and re-sculpted part of the upper body and the arms, and I honestly didn't go as far in that as I should have done. My problem with the Super 7 ones is that they are also very toyetic, and I wanted something slightly more realistic, and I got closer to that, but they're all very flat and wedge shaped, and I didn't appreciate that as much as maybe I could or should. So I attempted to resculpt some of that, and I didn't cut into this is a resculpted chest, and the arms are resculpted, but I didn't cut into the chest as much as I should have. And there are a couple of issues with like looseness of the arms and stuff that, again, probably having a couple of phases of mold and repair would have helped with. But yeah, I should have been much more aggressive with that sculpt. So I've decided to try again.
So I started with a concept design of where I wanted to have the joints and how I wanted the joints to work. From there I moved into, my initial thought was to sculpt it sort of piecemeal, to do the individual bits as I went along and start adding them together, but that wasn't working out the way that I wanted it. Next I thought, you know what, I'll sculpt the entire body on an armature and then I'll just cut it apart using some air dry clay. But this also wasn't working exactly the way I wanted it. So then I thought, you know what, I'll get some acrylic tubes and rods, and I will sculpt the joints in first, and then make the joints first and then sculpt in over that. But that actually wasn't working the way I thought either. So then I thought, you know what, I've got this old 3D print that a friend of mine did for me that I think I'll use that for the bones. So I started with a single leg. I started to put them together to sculpt the legs together so that they were similar in size, and sort of working out the hip articulation as I did that. And adding the hips next, which was a little bit of a challenge, trying to figure out exactly how I was going to go to that, considering I already had the hip articulation kind of in place. Next I added a bit of torso from the 3D print, just as a placeholder, and sort of, again, the bones to sort of start sculpting over. So start roughing in the tunic and making sure that that is fitting the way that I want it to, and working out the way that I wanted it to. Once I've got the tunic roughed in, then I start adding the arms one at a time, sort of making sure that they're the right length and size and fit with the overall process. And add in details like the collar and a blank head that I can sculpt stuff over later. Went back and actually extended the tops of the shoulders of the tunic, just because I wanted them to cover the joints a little bit better than they were. And then we finally, basically have the final sculpt that I'm going to make the initial phase 2 molds from, so then I can start really refining where I want the joints.
So there we have it. This is the current version of the sculpt. A little bit pleased with myself, to be honest, because this sculpt is solid enough that I've dropped it several times, and I did crack the heel, the right heel, as it came off the base that I've got it on, which is currently pegged in place. But other than that, it's survived everything. Now, it's a little bit rough. Part of the problem is that I used different mixes of putty in various places, and I've made some decisions as I went along with the sculpt. So as you can see, I use different putty there, and if I mix it up at different times, it comes into different colors. Plus I've handled it a bit, which yellows the knees, yellows the putty a bit. Yeah, it's pretty decent. So what happens now is I hit the camera, because at least once a video I have to hit the camera. What happens now is I start doing the phase 1 molds. Now I still need to sculpt his hands, and I'm going to do a number of different heads for various and nefarious purposes. But what happens now is I make some interim molds, phase 1 molds, I guess, or phase 2 molds, I guess you should say, since this is phase 1. And as I make the molds and pull some plastic castings out of that, I will then start cutting in the articulation and fixing things like smoothing out transitions. Like clearly the color change won't be there when I cast it in plastic, because that's putty. But I will start putting the articulation in. I've already got a little bit of hip articulation, which I'm actually going to change a bit. Basically, I'm trying to do something. I'm no Bobby Valla, so I'm not, I'm not getting this into production from a professional casting shop, but I'm basically trying to do something closer to 1/18 scale, a la the Hayatoys ones, because I like that articulation. So I've got, right now it's got like the classic G.I. Joe little ball and bar hip joints. I'm going to be doing that slightly different, because the Hayatoys have a larger type of that joint that I actually am kind of preferring. The arms are not articulated at all right now. There's just, like, this one is held on with it's not blue, but what they would call in the UK blue tack, basically, some kind of tacky poster-like substance. This one is, I had filled that with some putty to sort of fill it out. And as I'm going to go along, I'm going to do some things like this will all be smoothed out with the next phase as after I cast. I think the arms are actually a tiny bit long. So I'm probably going to shorten that a little bit as I add the hands, which the hands will be a separate piece. The head is currently attached as part of the neck. I'm going to mold that and then cut it loose. So there's a method to my madness, believe it or not. The way I think I need to make the mold, the next set of molds after the initial castings, where I start repairing and smoothing, will need certain things in order for me to be able to add the articulation in the mold to be able to mold it. So, but the legs, just believe it or not, never mind. Just pop off. So again, I've got a little bit. You can see where I've done a little bit of repair work. I'm at the point where I want to, like I said, start making the first set of molds, and I will be changing that for the articulation slightly. You can see it's got a little work to do on the interior of the hips, and I will be replacing the T-bar. And oh no, just kidding. It's supposed to do like that because I want to be able to cast. One of the things that I hate paint rub. I despise paint rub. So I really want to be able to cast each of the pieces in as close to the correct color plastic as they should be. That way I don't have to paint a bunch of stuff that might rub off later. I'm also going to be doing I'm trying to make the emblems on the shirt as a separate piece. So this will be out of focus. This will be there'll be basically a shallow hole there to pin things with. So basically I'm making two different styles for sure, and depending on how that works, it will be one body with separate emblems, or I'll have to make two bodies. But I'm going to have the Delta shield for Starship deployment, and the pedal, quote unquote pedal design for Starbase duty designation. But yeah, I've increased the shoulders a little bit because I like the sunken view that you've got on the Hayatoys a little bit. But yeah, there's going to be a lot of smoothing out in the next, once I make the castings. And then once I've got the castings smoothed out and any minor repairs that need to be done and fixed, it looks really ugly right now, but it's actually pretty smooth, believe it or not. I will then be cutting in the articulation, and then I will be using those pieces to create a second set of molds, possibly a third set of molds, depending on how many I need to get the corrections and the articulation that I need to get cut in there. But yeah, it's working out pretty well so far. I'm really pleased with where the sculpt is going. I'll need to get that's basically the blank for the head, and I'll need to cut that loose and start sculpting faces at some point. But there we have it. And these will unfortunately all be, or fortunately, I guess it depends on your point of view, all be in portable resin, because I don't have a I don't have a injection molding machine. I've looked into injection molding machines for home use, and they're still pricey, and I don't have the wherewithal to just pick up one of those. Plus the fact that to have really good molds, that's even more expensive. Like the actual cut steel molds, even cut aluminum molds would be expensive. Plus I would need someone's help with that. I would need to take it to someone who knows how to do that sort of thing. So I don't have the machine, I don't have the molds, so these will be all done with RTV silicone molds. But that's what I made these from, and although they feel, because of the plastic that I use, they feel lighter than, there's a weight that the real Adventure People figures have that these don't have, but they still turned out reasonably well. So I'm hopeful that this will continue in the manner in which I intend it to. So yeah, I think I've got a good start on it. I will be producing videos as I go along of making the molds and casting, and try to get some images of and video of actually trying to add the articulation and everything, all the way up to the final figures. Again, it'll be more than one. Now, having waxed rhapsodic regarding the limited release of figures, i.e., hey, we just released the Bridge Crew again for the 15th time. One of the things I also want to do with this, which I can do because it's multi-part and sort of a tiny bit generic. Clearly the tunic has a very specific style, and the cuffs on the boots. But I can take, especially once I start having it in even more separate pieces with the articulation, I will be able to take and reuse parts. So I could say, use the hips, resculpt the chest a little bit, and resculpt the lower leg a bit. And then, because the sleeves are sleeves without any decoration on them right now, I could probably use them to create other styles of uniforms, other styles of characters, i.e. aliens, and or other people that they have run across. I'm really focusing on classic TOS at the moment, but with this body style and with the a little bit genericness of some of the parts, I'll be able to add more pieces that will be able to focus on maybe other eras of Trek. That's not what I'm doing initially. There's also a female version of this, clearly, that I want to use. I think the female Trek figures are extremely underrepresented. Like, there's not an Uhura in the Haya line yet. if I had to guess, I would think that's part of that is due to the articulation, which is more difficult to hide in the short tunics that the women wear. So they would be more bare leg, and I think it's just a little more difficult to hide, and maybe they didn't like it, or maybe Zoe Saldana didn't give them the right to her likeness. But yeah, moving forward with that. Excuse me. Moving forward with that, I'm really going to be looking into adding to the line, including female figures. So, hope you enjoyed this. Please feel free to like, comment, subscribe, leave questions. I love talking about this stuff, clearly. I bore the hell out of people all the time with this kind of stuff. My wife's eyes glaze over a lot when I talk about this stuff, so feel free to pester me with comments. Love the interaction, and I would love to answer any questions. So I think for now that will be it, and we will see you next time.